So this is a complete guide to branch registration in Singapore. And the agenda of this presentation is what is a branch, the concept of branch explained, key points and comparison with the subsidiary, what are the legal requirements to be able to register a branch in Singapore, what are the documents required and the steps involved, some post registration matters and annual compliance. So let's have a look on this. And the first question is what is a Singapore branch office and how does it differ from a subsidiary company? So typically when a foreign corporate, a company in a foreign jurisdiction wants to open an office in Singapore, they have two options. The first and the most common option is to register a subsidiary company. So registering a subsidiary means creating an independent legal entity in Singapore and taking up 100% shareholding by the foreign promoting company. And the second option is to register a Singapore branch office. Now, when typically we get call from people or the potential customers, they use this term branch office and a company interchangeably. So when they refer to branch office, sometimes they actually want to register a company or they are not sure. But specifically speaking, a Singapore branch office has a specific meaning, and that is what this whole guide is about. So let's begin and let's first understand the concept of branch office. So let's suppose you are a company registered in Australia and you have an office in Sydney. Your business is doing good and therefore you want to diversify your activities and you want to explore other markets within Australia. So you decide to open another shop or maybe office in Brisbane. Now, when you do that, you don't go and create a separate company for this new office. All the activities are still under your existing company. And when you tell people that you're opening up a new office, you typically tell that I am opening up a branch in Brisbane. So branch is not an independent business entity, it is a part of same company. It is only a physical office or a presence in some other geographical area. So in this case, it is in some other city. Now let's take this concept and let's extend it beyond geographical boundaries. So in this case, you are again a company registered in Australia and you have an office in Sydney. And because the business is good, you want to explore other markets and this time you decide to open an office in Singapore. So as I have said, you already have an option of subsidiary or of a branch and we are discussing here about the branch. So when you want to open this office as a branch, you have few problems here because the country or the geography has changed. And the problem is that your Australia company is not recognized in Singapore. Nobody knows about your company. For example, if you go to a landlord and if you tell that I want to rent a place for my office, and if you provide the documents of your Australian company, the landlord will say that sorry, I don't recognize these documents because these are not what we use in Singapore. Or maybe your business operations require a license in Singapore, and Singapore government authorities don't really recognize your Australian company. Or if you go to the bank and ask for opening the bank account, they will say that which is your entity registered in Singapore. So when you want to open a branch in this manner across the geography, so you are a foreign company and want to open up a branch in Singapore, you need some kind of registration with ACRA. And this is what is called as a branch registration. Branch is not an independent legal entity, it is the extension of a foreign company in Singapore. In ACRA base file system, it is also referred to as a foreign company registration in Singapore. So basically your foreign entity is getting registered in Singapore so that it gets a recognition in Singapore business system so that you can carry out transactions and you can set up your office and do the necessary things. So one key point to note here is since branch is not a separate legal entity, its liabilities reach back to the parent company. And what that means is if your branch incurs some huge debt, then that debt can be recovered from the assets of your parent entity. And because branch is a part of your parent entity, the name of the parent entity is followed for naming the branch in Singapore, and the words are added as Singapore branch. For example, if the name of the company is ABCD Solutions Pty Ltd, then the name of its Singapore branch will be ABCD Solutions Singapore branch. So, what is the alternative to branch office? I mean, if somebody does not want to really register a branch, what alternative do they have? So, as I have already spoken, you can register a subsidiary private limited company. So, in this case, it will not be an extension of your foreign entity into Singapore. Instead, it will be a separate legal entity registered in Singapore, which is 100% owned by your foreign entity. In this case, the liabilities of local entity remain restricted to local entity only. In practice, only 1% of the foreign entities wishing to register a company in Singapore will register a branch. Rest 99% will register a subsidiary or an independent limited company. So the choice here is very clear. Majority of the companies intending to register operations in Singapore will prefer a subsidiary entity over a branch. So the next question is, if the incidence of branch registration is so low, in what scenarios branch is really registered and why companies prefer to do that? So there are certain business scenarios where branch registration might be necessary. For example, a parent company is of a significant repute and it wants to use its reputation in business contracts in Singapore, or using that reputation or using that connection is mandatory. For example, there is a company which is specializing in providing aircraft components, and that aircraft components also has its warranty and service schedule and so on. So if they incorporate a separate entity in Singapore and if that entity sells those components to aeroplanes which operates out of Singapore airport, then there will be the questions about the validity of the warranty and the validity of the servicing schedule. This is because this company will be an independent entity and clients may not agree to that. They may want that the liability actually remains with the original parent entity, and in this case parent company may be required to register a branch instead of a subsidiary entity. Another example is when the parent company has worldwide contracts which it must perform in Singapore, and for that registering a branch is necessary. So now, having understood the difference of branch and subsidiary at a conceptual level, let's understand these differences at a more granular level. So here we will see how it differs from a subsidiary private limited company in relation to formation, taxation and compliance matters. So here I present you a table which will explain you all these aspects. So when it comes to the legal form, branch is an extension of foreign entity. It is not an independent legal entity, whereas subsidiary is a different independent legal entity. Liability of a branch reaches to the parent company. So if there are any debts or creditors claims, those can be recovered from the parent entity assets. Whereas in case of subsidiary, the liability of subsidiary is independent and it does not reach back to the parent entity. Regarding share capital, since branch is not a separate legal entity, since it is only an extension, there is no separate share capital for the branch. Parent company's share capital details are entered at the time of registration of the branch. In case of a subsidiary company, it will have its own share capital which will be provided by the parent entity. Regarding directors, there are no separate directors for the branch. Parent company director details are entered while registering the branch. In case of a subsidiary company, directors can be separate because parent company and subsidiary are two different entities. Requirement to have a resident director or agent. In both the cases, one local resident director or agent is required. Basically, the role is same, but it's just called as agent in case of a branch, whereas it is called as a director in case of a subsidiary. The name of the branch must be same as parent company with word Singapore branch added. But because subsidiary is a separate legal entity, it can take any other name. When it comes to memorandum and articles of association, parent company memorandum and articles of association need to be submitted at the time of registration of the branch, whereas in case of a subsidiary company, a separate constitution can be drafted. And so far as business scope is concerned, business scope of the branch must be same as the parent company because it is just an extension of parent entity following same memorandum and articles of association. Whereas in case of subsidiary company, it can have a completely different business objective also. So moving on to the next slide, when it comes to the taxation and compliance matters, as far as corporate taxes are concerned, branch is considered a non-resident entity in Singapore and local tax benefits are available as per the prevailing rules, and in most of the cases these benefits will not be available. Whereas subsidiary by default will be considered as a resident entity. It will be taxed at local tax rates and tax benefits are available. The accounting year of the branch must follow the parent company accounting year. Whereas in case of a subsidiary company, accounting year can be different from that of the parent entity. For branch, audit is compulsory, whereas for subsidiary company, it may not be compulsory, meaning there can be an exemption depending upon the specific circumstances of the subsidiary entity. When filing the accounts in Singapore, along with the branch, filing of parent company accounts is mandatory. But this condition is not applicable in case of a subsidiary company. If there are any changes in the parent company constitution, directors or share capital, those must be lodged for the branch as a notification of change in Singapore, whereas such a requirement does not exist in case of a subsidiary company. So if you have seen this, you will understand that as far as compliance and maintenance matters go, subsidiary company is much easier to maintain as compared to branch. Obviously, therefore, the preference of the people is generally to go for subsidiary company and less for a branch. So the now next topic is what are the legal requirements to register a branch. So what things you should have to register a branch in Singapore, and this is slightly simpler than registering a normal company. What you need to have is the name which your parent entity already has. You need a resident agent. You need the constitution and details of the activities of the parent company. So constitution means memorandum and articles of association of the parent entity. And you need a registered address for your Singapore branch. Now out of these three things are not a problem. Resident agent can become a problem because since you are a foreign entity, you may not have anybody in Singapore to act as a resident agent. So there are two options. We at Epica can provide you a nominee resident agent. This is very much similar to a nominee director arrangement which we provide in case of company incorporation. It's just that it is called as resident agent here. Or the other option is that we can provide a nominee resident agent for limited time for registration purpose, registration of your branch. After registration, an employment pass can be filed for the key employee of your branch, and once the employee relocates, he or she can start acting as a resident agent of your company. So moving on to the next slide then, what are the documents required for registration of a branch? So these documents can be classified into two categories. First is documents required for KYC purpose. So KYC is something like our checks or the ACRA checks. Those are recommended that we should carry out on every potential client regarding identification, business activities and so on. And the second type of documents are those which are required for the registration purpose. Normally, when you incorporate a company, this second set of document is not required because you are registering an independent limited liability company or a subsidiary company. But in this case, we are registering a branch which is extension of a parent entity. So these documents will be required. So let's first have a look on the documents required for the KYC purpose. So when we do KYC, we would like to know more about your company, people behind that company, their identity documents, and accordingly the list is as follows. First of all, for the parent entity, the entity that is opening up the branch, we need following details. So the first is called extracts. Now this might be called by different name in your country. So extract typically is an extract from the official corporate house, company's house. If it is India, it is called Ministry of Corporate Affairs. If it is Australia or UK, it is called company's house. So accordingly, in your country, there will be somebody who maintains the official registry of corporate entities. From this document should be obtained, and it should mention the name of the company, registered address, incorporation date, activities, details of the current directors of the company, and details of the current shareholders of the company. So giving just a certificate of incorporation is not enough. These extracts will be required. Then the second document that we need is a board resolution of the parent entity where it will confirm that they intend to open a branch in Singapore and the person who is authorized to act as a representative in this matter, and if there is anybody who is required to be appointed as a resident agent. The next thing that we require is UBO chart, ultimate beneficial owners chart, if complex corporate shareholding is involved. For example, if your parent entity itself is again owned by another corporate entity, and if there is a complexity about that, then this UBO chart will be required. So if you are not sure what this UBO chart is, then you can refer to this chart, and we have another presentation, video presentation. I think it is for corporate shareholding documents required, which explain this in better way. And the last thing we will require is the background information about the activities of your company, last year's financial details to check what exactly it has done. So these are the documents that we require for the corporate entity. Now once we have identified the UBOs and the directors, so from extracts we will know who are the directors of your corporate entity, parent entity, and from UBO chart we will know who are the owners of the company. Then for all those directors and shareholders or UBOs, what we require are the identification documents. That is passport copy, a second identity card copy, which can be driving license, Aadhaar card, your national registration card, proof of residential address showing your name and your current residential address. This document should be issued in last 3 months, and background information about what this person does for a living. So these documents will be required for every director and shareholder and UBO of the company. Now let's have a look on documents required for registration of the branch. So as I said, these documents we need to lodge in Accra at the time of registration. So on the left hand side, I am showing you here parent entity, and right hand side we are showing branch registration. So the extracts which we have taken in the previous steps, we will take and lodge it into branch registration. So every director's details will be entered as a director in branch registration. Parent entity's memorandum and articles of association, certified copy, will be again lodged in branch registration. So we have to upload these documents at the time of registration, and share capital details of the parent entity will be lodged in branch registration. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one sample biz profile of a branch in Singapore. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is a sample business profile, first page of a live branch. And because it is a live branch, I have hidden or covered some of the fields partially. But you can notice here the registration number starts from T13. So the numbering scheme is different. So T13 stands for year 13 and FC stands for foreign company. And then after that there are some digits which you are not able to see, but those actually show the registration number. Then the company name is also shown here, and I have only hidden the part of that which says that this is a private limited Singapore branch. And as I said, the name has been changed to show that Singapore branch wording. When it comes to company type, the biz profile says that it is a foreign company registered in Singapore, and then there are some other details When you look at the capital part, you will be surprised to see that it has a capital, and that capital is Indian rupees and not typically in Singapore dollars. That is because this company which is opening the branch is from India, and because its share capital details of the parent company are entered here, they are coming in Indian rupees. Now I am going to move to the next screen. So this Indian company had only one local director. So that director is appearing as it is in this biz profile. You can see here a director, and then there are two agents, resident agents who are Singapore based. So this was in 2013 when two agent requirement was there. Nowadays it is only one agent is required. So now the next question is, what are the steps involved and a typical timeline in registering a branch in Singapore? So this is quite straightforward. Normally when you will contact us or our team, there will be some initial engagement which can be 2 to 3 days or even more depending upon the number of questions and clarifications you have. So typically a telephone call or a Zoom call can be arranged during this stage. Once all your doubts are covered or cleared, you will provide us the details. So these are the identity documents for KYC as well as other documents which are required for branch registration. Then in step 3, we will prepare documents and send it for signing. If you are in Singapore, you can sign it in our presence. But if you are not in Singapore, the documents can be signed overseas also. Once this signing is done, we will proceed for the branch registration and documents will be sent back to you after incorporation. And the last step will be the post incorporation matters, and we will introduce you to the bank. So as you can see, this total end-to-end process is generally of 6 to 7 days. And if you have more questions or if you need more time to get the documents, it can take longer also. Technical step of signing and registration can be done quite fast, but practically I will generally say 6 to 7 is a realistic timeline. Now after your branch is registered, there are few matters which you might need to attend, which we call it as a post registration matter. Typically this will include opening the bank account, customs registration, GST registration if applicable, and licenses if any. So this is not different from any other normal company that is registered in Singapore. What I mean to say, there is nothing specific for the branch here. Now your branch is registered, it has started operating in Singapore, and then the question comes as to the annual filing with ACRA and IRS, the part of which I have already handled in one of the previous tables, but I will touch it here again. So when it comes to ACRA compliance, there are two specific compliances that needs to be done. You must file audited results of Singapore branch with ACRA, and annual account of your parent company must also be filed in a reasonable time. So there is a time limit given by ACRA. But this annual accounts of parent company also must be filed in ACRA biz file system. So these are the two items that you must file. And when it comes to taxation, that is IRS, with Inland Revenue Authority of Singapore, you must file estimated chargeable income within 3 months from the end of accounting year, and tax return as at the due date must be filed with IRS. And branch is generally considered as a non-resident in Singapore and taxed accordingly. So you will get benefits if those are available to non-resident entities. Generally, prior to 2018, tax benefits to non-resident entities were not available, but now some of the tax benefits are available to non-resident entities also. So this was all about the branch registration guide. And I will say that branch office has higher compliance requirements and less flexibility compared to the subsidiary company. So generally companies will prefer to go for a subsidiary formation. Of course, I have explained some examples where registering a branch is a necessity, and in that case obviously the foreign promoters will go for that option.
Thank you for watching this video. This video was brought to you by Epica Consulting Singapore. Subscribe to our channel today to get notified when new videos are posted.